can't wait for Reddit to take this one out of context. Hello everyone, this is Venom Geek Media here, and today we'll be talking about the Galaxy class, and why it was, in many ways, a failure. Now, before you go hammering away at your keyboards defending the venerable Galaxy class, I want to make clear, I'm not actually going to be blaming the Galaxy class for this. What I ask for is a little bit of patience while I explain myself. Let's take a quick look at the Galaxy class. The Galaxy class is really an unprecedented idea and concept in starship design. It's a self-sustaining long-range deep space explorer with a large civilian population on board, able to spend decades in deep space with a potentially century-long service life. This is one of the most incredible starships Starfleet has ever built. So why is it that it spends most of its time doing busy work? Why did the Galaxy never get its chance to do what it was meant to do? So, a little bit of a disclaimer before we go in properly. This is based on what we see the Enterprise doing. Now, to be fair, the Enterprise is a flagship and is not going to be doing exactly the same thing as other Galaxy-class ships. But, and this is a big but, almost as big as the Galaxy class, the Enterprise is one ship and the Federation is very big. It stands to reason that if the Enterprise is having to do all this busy work, that at least some of the other Galaxy class ships are also having to do the same thing. Maybe not all of them, but given that there's only a handful of Galaxy class ships around during the next generation, even a few of them tied up doing similar kind of busy work to the Enterprise is more than you would really want. But what do I mean when I say busy work? Well, let's go into some of the missions we see the Enterprise carrying out during its lifespan. We see it rarely doing actual deep space exploration. We very frequently see it doing charting. We also see it engaging in investigations, providing humanitarian aid, colonial support, diplomacy, both internal and external, border patrol, and emergency response. Now, these are all very important roles, but only one of these things is exploration. That's what the Galaxy class was meant to do. All these other things are very important, but almost any ship could do those, right? But the Galaxy class seems to have a lot of its time taken up by all these things which it wasn't meant to be doing. So it's not that they shouldn't be able to do these jobs, they absolutely should. These are very vital and important jobs. But it's that they shouldn't be called upon to do these kind of jobs. It seems very much in Next Generation that the Enterprise is told where to go and what to do. Now, again, this makes perfect sense for the military structure of Starfleet. It makes absolute sense that you have a chain of command where commanders are given tasks that they need to complete. However, the Galaxy isn't really intended for a military role. Really, it should be treated less like another Starfleet ship, which I think should be commanded in a relatively military fashion, and should be more like Archer's Enterprise. That's actually a very good example of a ship that is allowed to operate basically according to the captain's discretion. It has complete freedom in how it operates. Archer is basically given a direction and told, go. That's not how the Enterprise D is given its mission. The Enterprise D is given very particular tasks that it must complete. It's not given an open-ended mission like you would expect a deep space explorer. The evidence is also within the title sequence of the Next Generation itself. It's continuing mission. It's not a 5-year mission, it's just a continuing mission. Now, on one level, that's quite open-ended. That means that the Enterprise could continue exploring strange new worlds for as long as it likes. But more often, it seems like it just gets called away from doing exploration in order to do, again, all these other jobs that I've just described. The Galaxy class seems to be called upon to do an awful lot of things that are not its intended role. Now, it does them very well because it's a friggin' Galaxy class. It's an incredibly impressive starship and there's very little it can't do. Because when you're building a ship that's designed to go on decades-long deep space exploration, you better be sure that it's able to anticipate and respond to every single eventuality. But in that way, it kind of becomes the curse of the Galaxy class. Because the Galaxy class is such a capable vessel, it means that it's constantly being called on. Everyone wants a piece of the Galaxy class. Now, during the service life of the Galaxy class, we'll see a couple of other ships potentially pop up that can help lighten the load, the main one being the Sovereign class, which takes over the tactical role that the Galaxy class was actually quite frequently called upon to fulfill. But it doesn't handle everything. The Sovereign really only handles border patrol and emergency response. That's still an awful lot left on the Galaxy class's plate. Now, potentially another ship design, which has recently appeared thanks to Star Trek Online and Star Trek Picard, is the Ross class, which is a sort of a halfway house between a Sovereign class and a Galaxy class. In a tactical role, the Ross is able to serve as more of a ship of the line. Unlike the Sovereign, which very much performs like a fast battleship, the Ross would serve more like the Galaxy and Ambassador, sitting in the battle line. But would also be more capable of things like diplomacy. You don't need a gigantic Galaxy class for diplomacy, even when you're dealing with the most prestigious of leaders. A Galaxy class is excessive. We see perfectly well that the Intrepid class can be used as a diplomatic transport, although that might be because speed was also a very key issue for that particular deployment. But certainly the Ross class could help take some of the load off, and also in other things like charting and command. Again, that's another thing the Galaxy class is called upon, basically because it's so big, is to be a command ship. And to an extent, that's again fine and good, because the Galaxy class can do that. But should it do that? Because being a command ship means that your hands are kind of tied, you then end up with an awful lot of obligations. So again, something like the Ross class, which can serve as a command ship, again takes some of that load off the Galaxy class, and maybe in that post-Dominion War era helps the Galaxy get out to doing what it is actually meant to do. Of course, we then run into another problem, especially made worse by Star Trek Picard, which is the Odyssey class. Now, if we went by STO's timeline, we wouldn't see the Odyssey class until the 25th century, which I think is more sensible. 50 years into its lifespan, the Galaxy can see its successor coming down the line, which I think makes more sense than what we get in Picard, where it feels far too early to have Odyssey-class ships running around. But that then brings us to another point. Is the Galaxy class too much? What do I mean by too much? Well, the Galaxy class is seen by many other races as a battleship. And then, just to confirm their beliefs, during the Dominion War, it is used as a battleship. It also possesses clear power projection capabilities. Now, this is a problem because it could arguably bias first contacts. Imagine the scene. A planet relatively similar to us today achieves basic warp flight, and then the next thing you know, a Galaxy-class starship shows up in orbit. Now, they say, oh, we come in peace, we're all nice and cuddly because we're the Federation, don't worry about it. But it's not even that the Galaxy class is so impressively armed. It's that the whole thing is so absurdly advanced. It's such a overwhelming statement of technological advancement that they don't even realize, like the Federation doesn't even know how impressive and overwhelming a sight the Galaxy class is. You show up in orbit with a small floating city with its own self-sustaining population, able to go decades potentially in deep space. And what, you think that's not going to prejudice first contacts? That's not going to affect how that civilization perceives the Federation? It absolutely does. Now, there were some concerns raised that Galaxy-class ships show up in orbit and it's all a bit much. So one of the potential alternatives, although it didn't pan out very well for psychological reasons, was the Coyote class, which was a small one-man explorer. The problem you run into with the Coyote class is, as I say, psychological limitations. People went a little bit stir-crazy on small one-man explorers. The project didn't end well, and I'm just going to leave it at that. The point being is that you ultimately, one way or another, with these kind of ships, you end up running into what seem to be pretty hard limiting factors when it comes to engaging in deep space exploration. And potentially that's why the Galaxy class spends so much of its time doing not deep space exploration during the next generation, because Starfleet probably realizes that actually it's not all that healthy for the crew, that actually it can be very taxing and can wear people down over time. So they're like, oh no, what we need to do actually is then give them a variety of missions, change things up constantly, so that people don't end up, going all shining on each other. So that's ultimately what the real problem you end up running into when we talk about ships like the Galaxy class, and indeed the Odyssey class, and also, interestingly, the Dideridex. That would also be a very interesting assessment to compare the experiences of those crews, especially Dideridexes, which would be spending most of their time concealed. Subject for another video, perhaps. Ultimately, what seems to be the problem with the Galaxy class is not the Galaxy class itself. This is something I suggested in a short video on the opening of Star Trek Beyond. The big limitation for Starfleet and any organization engaged in deep space exploration, the problem is not the ship, it's the crews, it's the people. And that's one of the problems Starfleet has yet to solve, is how can humans survive in deep space for long periods of time and sort of keep their faculties? How do you avoid the void getting to them? That's a very difficult question, and one that is really being asked by the time you get to the Galaxy class, because it does have that capability of going out there for very, very long periods of time. The ship is ready, but ultimately, perhaps Q was right. Perhaps humanity isn't quite ready. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you to my members for supporting the channel. My devoted Navarks, Jeffrey Ballard, Tully DT, Rella, and David Reeves. My dutiful commanders, Captain's Quarters, Philip Ty, Bird Monster, Jeff Hallam, Mark Philippe, Robert Sampson, Sean Farrell, Narata, Adam Bowman, Nathaniel Mead, DM Tribal Typhoon, Gabe Logan, Nicholas Walsh, JC Tech Wizard, Rizel 3D, and James C. And I salute my loyal Centurions, Pendlebury, Marcus Hall, Julian Arnott, Freedom Trooper, Okokatum Koyesto, Squadra Course, John Nicole, Athys Collection, Tobias Klein, Greg Martin, Shermos, and Shermos. And I thank all my loyal sub-lieutenants, and I welcome Nemesis, Zerdy, Dragonsword, AJ Williams, and Pimp Ton. Thank you guys for supporting the channel, and I will see you all in the next video.